recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. DeSantis, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, I'll talk about credibility and accountability because I think this is kind of something that is underneath all these issues we've been dealing with. And as I understand your testimony today with this AP case, something that bothers me is that, by your own admission, this is one of the most serious leak cases in the past 40 years. Your comments yesterday, you said it put the American people at risk. And yet, as you testified today, you don't know when you recused yourself, you have no record of you recusing yourself, and you didn't tell the White House that you recused yourself. And that bothers me because that explanation, one, I think is insufficient, and two, it insulates you and it insulates the President from any accountability about what happened. So is this really the best you can do in terms of explaining what you did for one of the most serious cases that you've ever seen in your professional life?
As I said, with regard to the question of how recusals are memorialized, I think writing a written response would make a great deal of sense. But the notion that I would share with the White House information about an ongoing criminal investigation is simply not something that I, as Attorney General, unless there is some kind of national security, serious national...
Which there was by your own admission to put the American people at risk, correct?
But we are talking about a limited group of people who had access to this information, some of whom were in the White House. And so the notion that I would share that information with the White House, I didn't share this information with people in the Justice Department. I mean, it was
but the people in the Justice Department, with all due respect, are not responsible for protecting the American people. The President is. So we just have a disagreement on that. Now, in terms of
the Justice Department, we are responsible for protecting the American people.
The buck stops with the President in terms of a serious risk to the American people. I understand they have duties to enforce the law. They're important duties, but ultimately the President is who we rely on. Now, in terms of with this Internal Revenue Service issue, do you agree? I mean, you're the head lawyer in the entire country, and your office, you are due respect for your office. Do you acknowledge that the IRS is a part of the Treasury Department and it is accountable to the President and that it is not an independent agency?
I don't know. I've heard that it's an independent agency. There is some kind of reporting responsibility within Treasury. Exactly how that is defined, I don't know.
You've been in law for 40 years. You're one of the most accomplished in terms of the positions you've had, and you don't know whether the IRS is a part of Treasury, whether the IRS commissioner is responsible to the President, or whether it is considered an independent agency. You really don't know the difference between those?
I didn't say that. I said the IRS, as I understand it, is a part of the Treasury Department. The IRS commissioner is independent, but has, is appointed by the President to a fixed term.
It can be removed at the will of the President, correct, per federal statutes?
All executive branch employees can be removed.
Okay, so then it's not an independent agency, right? Is it, can we just understand what it is?
I'm not sure where you're going with this question. If you're trying to put what the IRS did into the White House, that's not going to work.
No, it's not. Is it an independent agency, yes or no?
It is an independent agency that operates within the executive branch.
Well, then it's then that's completely begging the question. See, the President and the press secretary have said that it's an independent agency, that it's outside the purview of the executive branch. And my point is, yeah, maybe the President's not micromanaging every decision, but that IRS commissioner is accountable to the President, and the President can remove that individual. If the agency was truly independent, then the President would not have that authority to remove that individual. And so I think we need to be clear when we're making statements, and you had made that statement before today, but the White House press secretary and the President did, and I just don't think it was accurate. One more thing. With these Benghazi terrorists.
You have a question? I know. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
With Benghazi terrorists, I know nobody's really been brought to justice for this. I know the FBI was over there investigating. At this point in time, is this your purview to bring those people to justice, or is it a military issue? Who's in charge of exacting justice for the terrorists who killed 4 Americans?
It is the responsibility of it's my responsibility. It's ultimately, I think, my responsibility. And I mean, it's now, what, 7 minutes after 5 on whatever today's date is. And as of this date, this time, I am confident and proud of the work that we have done in determining who was responsible for the killings in Benghazi.
But there's not been any action taken to bring them to justice?
None that I can talk about right now.
Okay, very well. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Mr. Chairman, yield back the balance of my time.
Well, let me just say that in response, to add to that last response. That, because I'm not able to talk about it now, does not mean that definitive, concrete action has not been taken. That should not be read that way. We have been aggressive. We have moved as quickly as we can, and we are in a good position with regard to that investigation.
Can I just 5 seconds to follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Time of the gentleman has expired.
That's okay. That's okay.
The Attorney General is going to give you 5 seconds.
Can you say whether the concrete action?
He has to call me Mr. Chairman now.
Can you say whether the concrete action is law enforcement based or in terms of military based, being a kinetic response?
I can say that within the purview of the things that we do in the Justice Department, definitive action has been taken.
Now the time of the gentleman has expired, and the chair recognizes the gentlewoman from